Tamara stood frozen at her own front door, keys trembling in her hand. Through the crack, she heard her husband's voice. "Once she's gone, we split everything." His mother laughed coldly. "The life insurance alone is $500,000. No one will suspect a thing." Tamara's blood ran ice cold. The evening had started like any other Thursday. Tamara Green had left Chicago Memorial Hospital after what was supposed to be a full 12-hour shift. Her scrub still crisp because her floor had been unusually quiet. The charge nurse had sent her home early, a rare gift she decided to accept without argument. She'd even stopped to grab Brett's favorite Thai takeout, thinking maybe they could have a quiet dinner together for once. Maybe tonight they could talk about something other than Bill's and his mother's constant opinions about their marriage. But as Tamara approached the front door of the modest brick house her grandmother had left her, she heard voices inside. Brett's voice, unmistakable in its casual cruelty, and Helen's sharp nasal tone that had grated on Tamara's nerves since the day they'd met. She'd planned to walk right in, but something in their tone made her pause. Her hand was on the doorknob when she heard Brett say, "Once she's gone, we split everything." Tamara's breath caught in her throat. She stood completely still, the plastic bag of takeout cutting into her fingers. Helen's voice came through clearly, dripping with satisfaction. "The life insurance alone is $500,000, and once we sell this house, we can finally move to a decent neighborhood. You never should have married her in the first place, Brett. I told you this would be complicated." "It won't be complicated much longer," Brett replied, and Tamara could hear the clink of ice in a glass. He was drinking. He was always bolder when he was drinking. "This weekend, during her night shift, we stage it like a home invasion. This neighborhood has enough crime that no one will question it. She walks in on a burglary, things go wrong, tragic accident." Tamara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The man she'd married, the man she'd trusted with everything, was casually planning her murder like he was discussing a business deal. And his mother, the woman who'd smiled at their wedding while whispering to relatives that this marriage wouldn't last, was helping him. She stepped back from the door slowly, carefully, her nurse's training kicking in even as her mind reeled. "Don't make a sound. Don't let them know you know. Get somewhere safe." Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped her keys twice before making it back to her car. She drove 3 blocks before pulling over, her whole body trembling, and called the only person she could trust. Jasmine answered on the second ring. "Girl, I thought you were working tonight." "Jazz," Tamara whispered, and her voice broke. "I need help. I need help right now." 20 minutes later, Tamara was sitting in Jasmine's small apartment, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm evening, telling her best friend everything she'd heard. Jasmine, who worked as a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm downtown, listened with growing horror, her dark eyes wide. "That piece of trash," Jasmine hissed when Tamara finished. "That absolute piece of trash, and his racist mother." She started pacing, her mind already working through the problem like the legal professional she was. Okay, listen to me. You cannot go to the police yet. Not without proof. It's your word against theirs, and you know how that goes." Tamara knew exactly how that went. She'd seen it play out 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. A black woman accusing her white husband of planning to murder her? They'd find a way to make her the villain in that story. "We need evidence," Jasmine continued. "Hard evidence. Audio, video, something they can't deny, and we need to keep you safe while we get it." She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling my boss. Mr. Caldwell handles some criminal cases. He'll know what to do." The next few days were the hardest of Tamara's life. She had to go back to that house, back to Brett, and pretend everything was normal. She had to smile when he kissed her cheek. She had to sit through another dinner with Helen, who looked at her like something unpleasant she'd stepped in, making comments about how urban their neighborhood was becoming and suggesting that maybe Tamara should consider doing something with her natural hair because it looked unprofessional. Brett just sat there saying nothing, like he always did. The man who claimed to love her couldn't even defend her against his mother's thinly veiled racism. But now Tamara knew why. He was waiting for her to die so he could cash in. She recorded everything. Her phone, hidden in her purse or pocket, caught every snide comment, every microaggression, every moment of casual cruelty. Mr. Caldwell had given her specific instructions about what they needed, and Jasmine had helped her set up automatic cloud backups of everything. At the hospital, Tamara threw herself into her work with even more dedication than usual. Work was the only place she felt safe, the only place where she was valued for her skills and knowledge rather than judged for the color of her skin or seen as an obstacle to someone's inheritance. The other nurses relied on her. The doctors, most of them anyway, respected her clinical judgment. Here she was Nurse Green, the one who never missed a detail, who always advocated for her patients, who could handle any emergency with calm competence. It was that competence that changed everything. The night started chaotic. A major accident on the interstate had sent multiple casualties to their ER, and all hands were on deck. Tamara was helping triage when they brought in Bernard Hastings. She didn't know who he was then, just another trauma patient, a man in his 60s bleeding from multiple injuries. The ER was a controlled storm of activity, doctors shouting orders, nurses moving with practiced efficiency. But something wasn't right. Tamara watched the monitors, watched the patient's vitals, and her instincts screamed at her. The bleeding pattern was wrong. The symptoms didn't quite match the obvious injuries. "Dr. Reynolds," she said, catching the sleeve of the senior ER physician, "I think we're missing something. His presentation suggests a splenic rupture, but there's also—" "Nurse Green," Dr. Reynolds interrupted, barely glancing at her. "We're a little busy here. Why don't you focus on your job and let me focus on mine?" The dismissal was clear, and Tamara saw the familiar pattern. Dr. Reynolds had never liked taking input from nurses, especially not from her. She'd noticed how he listened readily to suggestions from the white nurses, but always seemed to question her clinical judgment. But Bernard Hastings was going to die if she let this go. "With respect, doctor, I really think we need a specific CT to rule out. Nurse Green, I don't have time for this. The patient is stable. We'll monitor and reassess." Tamara made a decision. She went directly to the attending physician, Dr. Kim, who was reviewing charts at the central station. "Dr. Kim, I need you to look at the patient in trauma 2. Something's not right, and Dr. Reynolds won't listen." Dr. Kim looked up, saw the intensity in Tamara's eyes, and nodded. "Show me." 10 minutes later, they'd ordered the scan Tamara had suggested. 15 minutes after that, Bernard Hastings was being rushed to emergency surgery for a rare splenic portal fistula that would have killed him within the hour if left undetected. Dr. Kim made sure everyone knew that Nurse Green had caught what everyone else had missed. Dr. Reynolds didn't apologize, but he didn't matter. Bernard Hastings was alive, and he'd been conscious enough to hear Tamara's voice insisting that something was wrong, fighting for him when everyone else had dismissed her concerns. That same night, Tamara came home exhausted, emotionally drained from the intensity of the shift and the constant fear that colored every moment she spent in her own house. Brett was waiting up, drunk, talking on the phone with his mother on speaker because he was too far gone to care about discretion. Tamara froze in the hallway when she heard Helen's voice crackling through the phone. "Did you get the crowbar? It has to look real, Brett. Make sure there's actual damage to the back door." "Got it last week," Brett slurred. "It's in the garage, wrapped in plastic. Saturday night, Mom. She works until midnight. I'll be at the bar with the guys until 11. Cameras will show me there. You'll be at your book club. Perfect alibis." "And you're sure about the route she takes from the hospital? She always parks in the back?" "Always. Cuts through the kitchen. I'll leave the back door unlocked. She walks in, surprises the burglar, and that's it. Tragic. They'll probably blame it on the neighborhood. You know how people are about areas like this." Tamara's phone was recording every word. She stood in the darkness of her own hallway, listening to her husband plan her murder in detail, and felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something harder, colder. These people had underestimated her. They'd seen a black woman they could use, manipulate, and discard. They'd forgotten that she was a woman who saved lives for a living, who faced death and fought it back every single day, who came from a line of women who'd survived things far worse than a mediocre white man and his bigoted mother. She sent the recording to Jasmine and Mr. Caldwell before she even took off her shoes. Then she went to the bedroom where Brett had already passed out across the bed and calmly began preparing for what came next. The following morning, Mr. Caldwell called her. "We have enough," he said simply. "I've contacted a detective I trust. We're going to do this carefully, Tamara. We're going to do this right. And we're going to make sure you're protected." The plan came together quickly. The police would be present but hidden. Tamara would confront Brett and Helen with officers stationed throughout the house, ready to intervene the moment there was any threat. It was risky, but it would give them the last piece of evidence they needed, a confession on record with law enforcement present. Saturday afternoon, Tamara sat in her living room and waited. Brett thought she was at work. Helen thought she was at work. Instead, she was wired with a police recording device, 3 officers positioned in the house, 2 more outside, and Mr. Caldwell present as her attorney. When Brett and Helen walked in together, planning to make their final preparations for that night's burglary, they found Tamara sitting calmly on the couch. "We need to talk," she said quietly. Brett's face went pale. Helen's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What are you doing home?" Brett asked, and there was something in his voice that made Tamara's skin crawl. Was he wondering if he could do it now, change the plan? "I know everything," Tamara said clearly, and she watched them both freeze. "I know about the life insurance. I know about the planned break-in. I know you've been forging my signature on loan documents. I know about the crowbar in the garage. I know all of it, Brett." Helen recovered first, her face twisting into a sneer. "You can't prove anything. You're just a paranoid." "I have recordings," Tamara interrupted. "Every conversation, every detail of your plan, every document Brett forged. All of it." Brett's face crumbled. Helen's mouth opened and closed, but for once she had nothing to say. "You thought I was just some nurse you could get rid of," Tamara continued, and her voice was steady as steel. "You thought I was nothing. You thought my life was worth $500,000 and a house you could sell. You forgot that I'm a woman who fights death for a living. You forgot that I'm stronger than you ever gave me credit for." That's when Brett moved, lunging toward her with rage in his eyes, and that's when the police stepped out from where they'd been waiting. The next few minutes were chaos. Brett shouting, Helen screaming about that woman ruining their family, her racism finally fully exposed in her fury, both of them being handcuffed and read their rights while Tamara sat perfectly still, watching the people who'd planned to murder her being taken away. It should have been over then. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Tamara was at the police station finishing her statement when a well-dressed man approached her in the waiting area. He was older, distinguished, with silver hair and kind eyes that looked at her with recognition. "Mrs. Green, I'm Bernard Hastings. I don't know if you remember me, but you saved my life 3 nights ago." Tamara blinked in surprise. "Mr. Hastings, I'm glad to see you're recovering. You shouldn't be up and around yet, though. That was major surgery." He smiled. "My doctors say the same thing, but I needed to find you. I needed to thank you properly." He gestured to the chairs. "May I?" They sat, and Hastings explained that he owned a network of private hospitals across the Midwest. After Tamara had saved his life, he'd wanted to know more about the nurse with the sharp instincts and the courage to fight for her patient even when dismissed. He'd made some calls, asked some questions, and learned not just about her excellent reputation at Chicago Memorial, but also about her current legal situation. "Mr. Caldwell is an old friend," Hastings said. "He told me what you're going through. I'm so sorry." "It's not your concern," Tamara said softly, exhausted. "But thank you. Actually, I'd like to make it my concern. Mrs. Green, I've spent the last 2 days reviewing your work history, talking to your colleagues, looking at your performance evaluations. You're exceptional. The kind of nurse who doesn't just follow protocols but understands the why behind them. The kind who saves lives others might miss. And your composure under pressure, both in the ER and apparently in your personal life, is extraordinary. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. I'm offering you the position of Director of Nursing Excellence at my flagship hospital. Six-figure salary, full benefits, housing allowance, and the resources to build programs that reflect your values. I need people like you leading my medical teams, people who see what others miss, people who fight for what's right even when it's hard. Tamara stared at the card, unable to speak. Additionally, Hastings continued gently, I've arranged for our corporate legal team to handle your divorce and the fraud prosecution pro bono. Your husband forged your signature on multiple documents trying to steal your home. We'll make sure that doesn't stand. The house is yours. Your grandmother left it to you and you'll keep it. I don't understand, Tamara whispered. Why would you do all this? Hastings smiled. Because you saved my life when someone else had already written me off. Because I've built a career on recognizing excellence when I see it. And because I'm tired of watching talented people, especially talented people of color, get overlooked and undervalued. You deserve better than what life has given you lately, Mrs. Green. Let me help you claim it. 6 months later, Tamara stood in a courtroom and watched Brett receive a 25-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and attempted theft. Helen received 15 years as an accessory. They'd both tried to make deals, tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, but the recordings didn't lie. Tamara's testimony had been powerful and precise, laying out years of subtle racism, financial manipulation, and finally the cold-blooded plan to murder her for money. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Tamara stood and looked directly at Brett. You saw a black woman you thought you could use and throw away. You thought I was weak. You thought I was nothing. You were wrong. In her new corner office at Hastings Memorial Hospital, Tamara built something beautiful. She created programs to protect and advance nurses of color, to ensure that their voices were heard and valued. She developed protocols that honored clinical judgment regardless of whose mouth it came from. She became a mentor to dozens of young nurses who saw themselves in her and dared to believe they could be more than the world expected. She bought Jasmine a new car, paid off her student loans, and made her the godmother to the future children Tamara now dared to dream about. Her grandmother's house became a rental property, generating income and honoring the legacy of the woman who'd raised her to be strong. But the moment that mattered most came 9 months after her arrest, when Tamara was invited to speak at a national nursing conference. She stood before 3,000 nurses and told her story, carefully protecting some details but sharing the truth of what she'd survived. She closed her speech with tears in her eyes, looking out at a sea of faces that reflected every shade of humanity. They saw a black woman they could use and discard. They forgot that the same strength that built my ancestors would protect me too. Never let anyone convince you that you're worth less than you are. Your value isn't their permission to give. Those who underestimate you based on your race, your position, or their prejudice reveal only their own smallness. Trust your instincts, protect yourself, fight for your patients and fight for yourself, and never forget, you were never the small one in the room. They were. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes, but Tamara barely heard it. She was thinking about the girl she'd been, walking into a marriage she'd thought was love. She was thinking about the woman she'd become, standing in her truth and her power. She was thinking about all the women who'd come before her, who'd survived things far worse with far less, and all the women who'd come after who'd need to know that survival was possible. Tamara had walked through fire and come out forged in steel, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure that no one else would ever make her feel small again.